Hello, good evening. This is Dr. Joanna Herrera with We Thrive, and we welcome you to Mindful Mondays, where we, take 15 to 20 minutes to pause and practice together. So we are here as a mindful community. And this evening, we're going to do the rain practice. It's one of my favorite mindfulness practices, and the rain practice is something that's been developed and popularized by Tara Brach, one of our favorite meditation teachers at We Thrive. She's also a clinical psychologist. She wrote this book. She's written many books, but lately she's written Radical Compassion, which is a book that's entirely dedicated to the rain practice. And the rain practice is something that we can do, formally, setting aside time and, going through the practice. And later, I'll introduce what RAIN stands for. But it's also an informal practice. Um, RAIN is a really great practice for when we're feeling stuck with certain emotions, such as anger or fear, hurt or disappointment. So, whenever we have these strong feelings and we feel like the feelings are so solid, so immovable, rain is a practice that allows us to flow with our emotions. And the flow comes from being able to turn to ourselves, to turn to our feelings with compassion. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Um, I'd like to share first this quote from Tara Brach's book, Radical Compassion. And she says, our deeply grooved habits of no, our angry reactivity, anxious worry, defensiveness, addictive behavior, and self blame keep us from living true to ourselves. When we interrupt these habits with a mindful, allowing presence, we begin to access our full human potential. This is the power and freedom inherent in yes. So when we get stuck with difficult emotions, it can sometimes create an inner resistance, a contraction, inner tension that also creates outer resistance. So life doesn't cooperate with us when we are feeling like our windows are shut. So rain is a way for us to open our windows first and foremost to ourselves. So let's try the rain practice. Um, and RAIN stands for recognizing. So recognizing what's happening, recognizing the emotion, just allowing the feeling to be what it is, recognizing it for what it is. A stands for allowing or accepting. So instead of pushing it away or blaming ourselves for having these feelings or criticizing ourselves and activating the inner critic, we just allow the feelings to be as it is. I stands for investigating with gentle and curious attention. It's about bringing our curious mind to this experience or to this emotion. What's the hard part of this? What's the part of me that's needing compassion? And how can I direct compassion to this feeling? And N stands for nurturing with loving presence. So the only way we can turn to others with compassion is to first nurture ourselves when we're having these difficult feelings. So we will be inviting ourselves to call on our compassionate self in order to respond to these feelings. So, with rain practice, we can take a U turn from our inner resistance, our tension, our contraction, our no, and be able to say yes to life. Yes to life in the midst of our discomforts and difficulties. So, let's begin. Let's begin by finding an alert but comfortable posture with our feet flat on the floor, feeling the earth, feeling the ground, feeling the solidity of this earth that supports us, straightening our backs, relaxing our shoulders, softening our bellies, our abdomen. You may or may not close your eyes. It really is up to you, whatever feels safe, whatever feels right. And we can start with 3 sounds of the bell calling us to mindfulness. Let's begin by welcoming ourselves into this practice with a few soothing breaths. Coming home to our breathing, breathing in and breathing out, allowing the breath to remind us of how to flow. The breath is the flow of life within us, life flowing in us, life flowing through us. The breath reminds us that everything moves. Sometimes feelings can feel so solid and fixed. Yet when we come home to the breath, we know everything moves. So let's be present to any emotion or any feeling that's been maybe that's been troubling us, a feeling that we find ourselves stuck with, a feeling or an emotion that's causing resistance, tension, recognizing it, recognizing our feelings by naming. When we name our feelings, we help ourselves organize and get to know our experience. And if you can't name it, it's okay. But try to see if it's anger or sadness, if it's fear, loneliness, hurt, maybe grief. Recognize, and if you can, find the words to name a predominant emotion or feeling. And if you can't name it, just recognize perhaps the texture of the feeling. Is it feeling rough? Is it feeling tight? Is it feeling dark? It's okay. So, as we begin to recognize what's there without judgment, although we might notice ourselves reacting with judgment. Let's let's try to provide a more conscious response to our emotions by allowing and accepting, letting it be, letting this emotion be just as it is. This is a U turn that comes from being conscious and intentional with the way we relate with ourselves. Often, when we have unpleasant feelings, we blame or criticize ourselves, we push it away. And when we do that, we turn ourselves from who we are. We turn ourselves from the truth of our experience. And it causes us more hurt. It causes others more hurt. So, allowing this experience to be, allowing this anger to be anger, allowing this sadness, this grief or loneliness to be seen for what it is and saying yes, yes, my feeling, my anger, my sadness, my fear, I see you and I allow you to be what you are. This is where we take our U turn from our conditioned, habitual no's to opening to the extent that we can a door that says yes to our inner experience. And as we say yes, as we allow these feelings to sit in the living space, the living room space of our inner world, of our heart space, allow it to help you understand what's what's generating the hurt, what's generating the anger, asking to see what situation has been difficult, allowing this emotion to speak to us in a way that helps us understand ourselves better, inviting the emotion to reveal to us what is it that's been hard, what is it that feels vulnerable for me right now, what's the most vulnerable part of this feeling, and what's the most vulnerable part of me that needs to be held, that needs to be heard. It's a gentle investigation so that we can invite this kind but wise understanding of who we are and the movements of emotions, weather patterns within us. Maybe we've been hurt by an interaction. Maybe there's a storyline in our heads that is building resentment. Maybe we feel stuck with not being able to forgive, for not being able to forgive ourselves or another person. Maybe we're tired, exhausted. And so, as we begin to understand, let's nurture ourselves by asking our feelings, our emotions, how can I take care of you? I'm not pushing you away, not judging you. I'm turning to you with a loving heart, with a loving awareness that is ready to nurture. How can I nurture you, my feelings? How can I nurture you, my anger? Do I need to stop and rest? How can I nurture you, my sadness? Do I need to reach out to a friend, to someone who can make me feel held in this moment of sorrow, in this moment of grief? Or can I nurture myself by simply smiling, smiling to myself and accepting these experiences as part of my humanity? I am human, I can be vulnerable, just as all of us are. And perhaps returning to our soothing breaths as a way to nurture ourselves right here, right now. Allowing each breath to be a soothing presence to our feelings, to our vulnerability, to our hearts. Thanking ourselves for this time of being able to pay real attention to ourselves and gently releasing ourselves from this practice by slowly opening our eyes if our eyes were closed and reorienting ourselves back to the room wherever we are. Maybe wiggling our toes, gently moving our fingers, maybe looking around just to reorient and scan where we are. Let's listen again to the sound of our bell. Thank you so much for joining me in that practice. So, once again, rain can be a formal mindfulness practice, stopping like we did today to go through recognizing, allowing, and accepting investigating with kindness, and nurturing with loving presence. But you can also use this at any moment when you feel struck by big feelings or difficult feelings in the moment within yourself. You can go through these steps, recognize, allowing and accepting, investigating, and nurturing. I hope this is helpful. All our practices here are, meant to be everyday life practices, things that can build up our resilience when we're able to turn to ourselves with compassion. Thank you so much. See you next week on Mindful Mondays.